This is a quick class today. Done, of course, by students, and we're going to get busy on group of 11th grade students. Stay right there. Shortly to present. that they'll come shortly to teach us how to say in their 30-minute presentation. Once again, I'd like to apologize today, and but they will be here shortly to show us the proper way to write a rhetorical essay. My apologies again in your time. I'd like to apologize for the tardiness of they will be here shortly. Next. a 2-minute video presentation. Okay, looks like rhetorical essay. Maybe not 30 minutes now, but close to it, hopefully. Okay.
Hello, and welcome to Script Class. My name is Marcus. 11th grade form. So step one of rhetorical essay is simply understanding the question. And when I say understand the question, I don't necessarily mean you have to read the question slowly, but carefully. Because as you're reading it, you have to pick out a few factors from it. And those factors come in the shape of soaps. SOAPs, obviously being an abbreviation, the first S in SOAP stands for subject, and subject is basically the main idea or the topic being discussed is what everything revolves around. After that comes occasion, and the occasion is the event. For example, question. And then comes the audience, and the audience isn't necessarily whoever reads it, it's who was it intended to be read by. Like if a little girl is supposed to be read by an adult, he is an audience, but it wasn't the intended audience. It was little girls that were the intended audience. And then we have P, which stands for purpose. Purpose is why it was written. It wasn't like why wasn't why this specific paper was written, but this subject kind of on it. And then we got S for speaker, and speaker is simply the author, the person who wrote it. Step 2 in the rhetorical essay writing process is brainstorming. And the brainstorming in the rhetorical essay is kind of different from typical ones, simply because it's not really a question of like yes or no, agree, because in rhetorical essay, like the main difference in a rhetorical essay and like any other essay is that most other essays see what the author wrote and discuss what he wrote. Rhetorical essay, on the other hand, discusses how the author wrote it, rather than what he actually wrote. So for the brainstorming, we have to take a few things into consideration when we're like looking for elements inside the passage we're analyzing, for example. One of them, for example, is Diction, which is really just choice of words. There's syntax, which is like how you put words together, usually very long sentences. And then there's figure of speech, which is when you say something, but you don't mean it literally, but it kind of represents something. And then you have detail, with some detail to just like help the audience or reader understand what I'm trying to say, but it adds a little extra detail, which usually would not be added. Yeah, imagery. Imagery is kind of something that kind of like explains surroundings, like if you're describing the trees and snow or a pond, that would be imagery. After that, okay, yeah, I've covered all the styles. And now we have appeals. Now, for appeals, there are a bunch of them. Ethos, which is simply evidence. Everything that's written down has to be, backed up by some sort of evidence. It can't be like just how you feel or what sounds right. It has to be literally proof. And then you have logos. Logos is logic. Now, I think logic is it's not again how you feel, and it's not evidence. Logic is simply like I believe the rat ate the cookies. We know we have a rat, and we know the cookie jar was open, so it's logical to assume the rat ate the cookies, but you can't be too sure about it. And then last, well not last, but we have pathos. Pathos is basically just emotion. You have to connect the emotion of the audience. For example, if I said, donate now because kids are dying, it's like donate to cancer research. I'm not giving you any logic or evidence necessarily. Like, kids are dying of cancer, but more or less, I'm trying to catch you emotionally, make you kind of almost like guilt trip you into like donating, for my hospital or research academy or lab. Okay, so step 3 is the outline. Now, with the outline, with the outline, we mainly also focus with things I just mentioned, sort of the styles and the appeals. But rather than just finding ways to link them together, we're going to connect them to an example. Like if I give you a certain sentence, like I was walking out in the field, I was walking out in the grassy field after the snows had finally melted, and I heard what sounded, and I heard an owl. Now, that would be logos because I didn't see the owl, but from the sound and my memory, it's logical to assume it was an owl, but it could be just a person implementing an owl. So that's logos. Now for the style, it's imagery because I'm describing my surroundings, I'm describing the field, the fact that snow just melted, details like that, etc. Make imagery. And the outline is basically just a bunch of those continuously connecting, and those would be like the example of body part. But over that, okay, so the thesis came first. I'm sorry. Outline is the 4th step. Thesis is the 3rd step. The thesis is basically the most important sentence in the entire essay. An essay without a thesis, rhetorical or argumentative, it means nothing. You might as well just throw it out the window and burn it. The thesis is basically like a really short summary of the main points you're trying to bring out, not the sub-points, but the exactly main points you're trying to bring out. And without the thesis, you never have a well-written or functional even essay. Also, the thesis always comes as the last sentence of the introduction, or at least that's what it's probably supposed to be. Afterwards, like I said, I was talking about the outline. My bad, I put that before. I just forgot. The outline. There we go. So, like I said, the outline is made of those things goes in the center, and before up in the introduction section, you'd have the thesis. So it's thesis, and then those body parts, which I explained. You have your example. You have like a sentence, and you say, "What's the appeal?" Which we mentioned was logos, and then we have style, which we mentioned was imagery, and then you have like a bunch of those, depending on how many paragraphs you really want to write in this essay. So let's put 3. Let's say we want to just write 3 body paragraphs in this essay, and then you have the conclusion, and we're gonna just explain the conclusion more later on. So I'm going to explain it later. Right. So after that. So after the outline, we have the introduction paragraph. Now, the introduction, the outline itself was just the thesis. Now, the introduction paragraph has a format, a specific format, which you don't necessarily have to make a rhetorical essay, but it's the proper way. And before we start anything, usually these things in MLA, like give it to a professor or a teacher, it's best you put that format in. But more or less, back into the introduction paragraph. The introduction paragraph contains the soaps, and basically at the beginning you mentioned, I believe it was, wait, you mentioned the speaker's name. So, for example, let's say Jimmy Carter, that's the name. But if you're going to put one name, put the person's last name. Never put the first name. It's improper that way. And then you write the occasion, what's happening, like for example, a UN conference, for example. And then you write the purpose, right? And then, and under that, all right, so my bad, I was mixing up the soaps. Don't believe in my them, to be honest. Well, I memorized the soaps, I don't memorize the order. I was supposed to have a PowerPoint by me. But anyway, so you take the soaps, which you mentioned were the subject, occasion, audience, purpose, and then speaker. And through a collection of these, it's 3 sentences that involve these. Most of them are the first, and like each other sentence that follows, the 2 last ones have one individually on them. So that would be the first 3 sentences of introduction paragraph, and then you put the thesis. So that's usually 4 sentences for introduction. All right, so now we have the body paragraphs, and we mentioned before the body in the outline, which is basically the example, then style, and the appeal. But in the body paragraph, you can't say that this is, for example, ethos, so you can't say that this is imagery. Well, you can't say it directly. You can't just mention it straight out like that. You have to kind of hint at it in a way. And there's a format for each sentence in each body paragraph. Well, not each body paragraph, but a body paragraph has like a bunch of sentences with a format to them, which I guess will be video edited later. And through those, you'd have your body paragraph, and your body paragraph would be like each paragraph we'll be talking about one section of which you studied, like for example, that one sentence or like 2 sentences which you took out from them, their style, their appeal, and just generally what they were talking about. So let's say I get that done. I get like 3 others, right? And so that would be done with my body paragraphs, necessarily speaking. After those body paragraphs, I have my conclusion, which now we're getting to. Right. So in the conclusion, It's basically a quick summary or paraphrasing of all the information that was previously stated. Usually in the conclusion, you want to put the key elements or key points you talked about, because it's one paragraph that, depending on what kind of essay you wrote, it could be representing, let's say, 10 paragraphs. So really just the key factors that you want to repeat to the audience or just the one reader, really starts to memorizes. All right. Now, summarizing is really like taking a huge sentence or a few bunch of sentences, usually a paragraph, and kind of just squeezing down all those and squeezing down all that information into like one sentence. That would be summarizing, or just a few sentences, but it has to be like a third or a fourth of what it used to be in size. Usually you just take the main points and stick them into each other. Now, paraphrasing is kind of like that, except you don't just take those main points and break them down into there. You break them down for yourself, and then you write it down in your own words. That's the main difference between summarizing and paraphrasing. Summarizing, you just cut it down, and paraphrasing, break it down for yourself. You understand what was trying to be said, and then you write down your own words, which is kind of shorter. Also, as we're going from sentences to sentences, sometimes you have to use transitional words. Transitional words are just words that help ease in one sentence from another sentence. I believe because is a transitional word, because it would just bring you from one sentence to the other sentence. Like, for example, James bought his bike yesterday morning because he wanted a better form of transportation. He wanted a better form of transportation, and he bought that bike. But to add them together, as that transition would kind of ease in transition between both independent clauses. Right, so basically we got our entire paragraph, not paragraph, but like essay written down. And we just want to review a few points. First of all, we had our soaps, which were the speaker. And I just want to go over the soaps and just describe them in more, let's say, detail. So now, the speaker, we're going to say, well, not speaker, the subject, say, is global warming. Okay? So we got our subject, which is global warming, and I'm just making this question in my head to kind of like help you ease into this idea and just understand it quicker. And then the occasion, let's say it was a United Nations conference on climate change. Okay? So that's our occasion. That's what got us to write this paper. And then you got our audience, which would obviously just be the members of the UN. I guess you call them senators. And maybe in the UN, or just presidents and kings, or just rulers present there to listen to what you're trying to say. And then you got the purpose, and the purpose is to get these people to change their way of life and kind of just ease the destruction of Mother Nature, just maybe even help make some programs to kind of rebuild forests and natural wildlife. And like reduce carbon emissions so the ice stops melting at the rate it does. And then you got the speaker, which would obviously be me if I was talking there, or you, Benton, who's talking at this moment. Let's say it was a Ronald Reagan, no matter how impossible that would be. Something else with the appeals, I said that Pathos wasn't the last one, but logos, Pathos, and ethos are really just the main three we want to focus on, but there's also something called inductive and deductive. All right, so basically, inductive is taking something that, like, something really small and kind of making it bigger than it is. Like, for example, if I had a flat tire and I was getting repairs, but I kept making this huge issue of like how this tire, one time I had to get somewhere that would be inductive. Inductive is the opposite. I take something big and turn it into something little small. Like, for example, I haven't studied much for my SAT, and it's coming up, next Tuesday. That's a big issue, mostly for me because I got new SAT code. Now, if I was making that smaller, I'd say, for example, it's next week, but oh well, it's just a test. I could do it again later. Well, depends on how many times I did, but still. So I'm basically reducing the value of what I previously said. In the beginning, it was more of a horror story, and now we're just casually moving by. Right. So we went through most of these things and kind of went through thoroughly. But I want to go through the other things to make sure you understand it. So ethos, we said it was evidence. Now, to give an example of ethos, I'd say we have images of you stealing the cookie. I know, cookies. Anyway, that would be ethos, because that's actual proof that person did it. Someone isn't guessing it out of logic, or they just think, they feel that someone did this. They actually have proof, solid evidence that this actually happened. Another example of ethos was like, I saw the apple hooting. I'm not hearing it, so I can just make an assumption. I will know I actually saw it hooting. So that would be ethos. That's evidence. That's straight up evidence, which is just logic.